Well, welcome to our next episode of The Difference a Dad Makes. My name is Brian Mattson. I am one of the co-hosts here, and we are missing our normal other co-host because Jay Foch welcomed a baby boy into his family, little Gibson, so we're excited for him. And so Dr. Jennifer Baker is stepping in as our co-host, and we are excited here on episode 4. We're going to be talking about building confidence in our children, and so we have somebody who's dealt with a lot of kids over their career as an educator and administrator. Paul Baker, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You are an educator and a former principal, right?
I would start out as a teacher, became principal. That was a lot easier because all I had to do was keep the teachers working, and I could just kind of hang out in my office and drink coffee. So it was a great gig. Keep them going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you found the secret. That's important.
I did. I found my place in life. It was wonderful. Lots of children. I got to be the fun. They were the hard side.
Well, there were those children who came to the office occasionally, right?
Oh, we had some that were sent, yes. And their parents were sent to the office. Yeah.
And we should make it clear that Paul is the spouse of Dr. Jennifer Baker. And so she has done some parenting on Paul as well. She had to instill some confidence in him. So we're talking about building confidence in children. And obviously Paul has some experience building that at the school, but he's also a father of 2 kids, Minor Baker, who's a educator himself, and their daughter Miriam, who's a very compassionate, empathetic soul as well. So, Paul, what's the secret to instilling confidence in children?
I think you have to let them experience things. You have to require things of them. Jennifer and I were always very big on chores, and it was a battle, I can tell you. It was a battle when they were doing chores, whether it was mowing the grass or cleaning their room or doing the dishes. And it was a lot easier to do it ourselves. But we would stand together, and we'd say, we need to do this. And where one of us got weak, the other one would say, now, come on, keep it up.
Do you have any? Go ahead.
I would just say that I tended to be the stricter one, and he was the more laid back, which came in pretty handy when I had just had it, and he could take a more like, kids will be kids, but we can still do something about this. But I mean, it really was his thought that we would have the lawn boy and the lawn girl. Now, there is a certain brand of lawnmower called the lawn boy. We had 1.25 acres of grass, and he said, why would I want to get a riding mower, which most people would have? He said, I have a lawn boy and a lawn girl. So maybe you could tell them about that.
Oh, it was wonderful. The one that mowed first would get to choose. It was divvied up into 2 parts, and one was out near the road and one was around back. And so if you got right on it, you could choose the one. The one was a little bigger, but Miriam never liked mowing out front because she thought all the cars going by were looking at her. And so she never liked to mow. So she would sometimes jump on it and do the bigger half in the back and get it going. It was sometimes hard to get second person motivated because they've already lost that battle. So it was great though. We get together now and they're in their 40s and we laugh about things they said and did about trying to avoid mowing and all of that, and everything that would come up. So
now, when they were starting on this chore, I'm assuming early teens, มีupper elementary.
Probably 12, 13, 14.
Yeah,
and that,
11, 12.
How terrible were they at mowing at the beginning?
There would just be strips all over the yard. And, they'd get done, they'd come in, oh, I'm done. I'd say, well, let's go out and look together. So we'd go out there and stand. And they were always surprised that they had missed so much. But I said, the good news is you'll be back next week. And maybe you'll hit those higher points and, leave some other ones. It'll be great.
Sometime I would insist that had to be fixed.
Well, of course, you don't want a mohawk as a backyard.
Yeah, kind of a mohawk effect.
You want clean lines and everything cut. That's the goal of mowing the yard, is that all of the grass gets cut, right?
And we never had a fine yard. It was whatever grew.
Yeah, that's the way to do it anyway. People spend too much time putting everything in their grass, right?
Putting money into that and then hauling it off. Oh, it's horrible.
Not for me. If that's your thing, Godspeed. I'm glad that's your thing. But I just want to get the job done.
Well, I would say that we felt that it was good for children to sweat, perspire, do something boring, because it had to be done. And there are a lot of things in life that are not fun that you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, and now, did you guys offer any sort of financial incentives?
We did give them money, not necessarily just for that. It was like, here's your money for the week. I guess occasionally we took some away. If one of them did the other one's job, they could pick up some of their revenue.
Yeah.
And so that worked out well. But we tried not to hinge just on do this because we were afraid they'd say, well, I don't want the money. I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It was more like you live in this house and you make family contributions because, you're a member of this household. Everybody here needs to contribute. And so there were 3-point contributions, 2-point contributions, and 1-point contribution. And you had to make at least 6 points of contribution per week.
Wow.
And then you got a certain amount of money to manage. And that money management gave you some idea about what things cost in the real world. Like if you have to have that fancy shampoo for your hair, well, you can use your money to do that.
Now, did you notice, now your lawn boy and lawn girl today are in their 40s. Do they still like mowing the yard?
No, but they have children who mow.
They have children that are mowing the yard, so the next generation is doing it.
Yeah, they've learned.
And I try to hire the grandkids, to do things. I'm more generous with my resources now that I have grandkids.
Yeah, I've heard that happens.
Yeah, you can spoil them a little bit.
Now, did you notice the skill level of their mowing get better and better as time went on? Do they become more confident in doing that specific chore?
Well, how about that job that you secured or helped our son secure?
Across the street, there was a company that did roofs. So they had their supplies there. I had like a storage place. And that guy asked if our son would mow their yard. Now, the funny thing was there was like no yard. It was like around the edge. So it maybe took him a half an hour. And they were paying him like $35, an unheard amount at that time. And I'd say, now, Andrew, as long as our yard gets done, you can use our lawnmower over there. If not, you need to go buy a $300 lawnmower. Oh, that would take like 10 weeks of your...
Right.
Yeah. So, we got to keep this flowing. We got to make this work. We're kind of like partners in this.
Yeah.
This Good Dads podcast is brought to you in part by our generous supporters. This week, we'd like to thank the following: Table Rock Chores, Mr. and Mrs. Bob and Susan Biney, Midwest Auto Source, Pinnacle Family Advisors, Vision Clinic. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Visit our website at gooddads.com to learn how to contribute to the Good Dads mission.
Now, were there other things that they had to learn how to get good at that you had to allow them to maybe fail a few times before they kind of maybe mastered a chore or even a hobby or that they like doing?
We did let them do cooking. We had some interesting meals. I can remember when once somebody put in a tablespoon of chili powder versus a teaspoon of chili powder.
That'll get you.
That was a learning.
That was a learning moment. We also, I had the theory that by the time you were 10, 11, 12, you should know how to do some basic life skills. You should know how to clean the toilets in the bathroom and use the vacuum sweeper and dust and do dishes and all of those kinds of things. But then when they were about 13 or 14, I said, you have to clean your room to my satisfaction once a month but beyond that, if you want to live in a pigsty, I will just sort of close the door for a month. So in other words, I think kids need to know how to do it, but then you also need to let them do a little rebelling. How important is it that they make their bed every morning? Now, as far as I know, they make their bed, but it doesn't really matter to me because I don't live in their house.
Right.
And they seem to have gotten it out of their system because they don't live in a pigsty now. Miriam could live with clothes just all over. I go over there now and I'm working on now and everything's in its place. So I don't know. Someone got out of her system and now she's better.
That's growth, right?
Yeah. So I would just say, if it's really important to you, make sure your child knows how to do it. Whether or not they like to do it is kind of immaterial. They know how to do it. And then in some areas, you might back off a little bit, like their room, especially during their teenage years. But maybe the grocery shopping experience was the most fun, teaching them about how much groceries cost.
Yeah, a little home economics lesson.
Yeah. Give them a little money and tell them we need this many things, and then they're free to use the rest on things they want, but there was no rest unless they got the cheaper potato chips and unless they did this. On that topic, though, and you have little kids, do you play games with them?
Yes,
like Candyland and things.
Yeah. I love playing chess, and so Jack would watch me play chess, on my phone when I'm killing time, and he was like, "Can you show me how to play chess?" And this was probably a year and a half ago, and he was 4. I was like, "Yeah, I'll teach you how to play chess," and then it just turned into, well, no, I just want to knock your pieces over. So I've realized that chess is too hard of a game to teach a 4-year-old. So we do a lot more of like taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza, where it's kind of like match pairs, slap the table, stuff like that. The things that are easy, because I found out simple is better with 4 and 6-year-olds at this point. But the thing that I've noticed that they start having a lot of fun is when we do the same game several times, and that repetition factor, they know how to do this better. They start seeing maybe not so much strategy, but where the patterns are in the game.
Do you let them lose?
I do my best to let them lose occasionally, and I will say Jack is much worse at losing than Dorothy is. Dorothy can lose and kind of move on with her day. If Jack loses, it's the end of his day, We'll be playing baseball in the backyard, and I'll let him get, we'll get close. And then if I start getting ahead, then he starts getting really frustrated. And I usually let him come back and win, but there's been several times where I have won. Dad has won, and Jessica has come out and said, if you're not having fun, we're done playing. So and he loves it. He just hates losing.
Yeah. I had a wonderful grandfather, and they lived just down the road from me. And I could get off the bus. I could walk a little bit, be at their house, and then I could walk a little bit, and I'd be home. So I would stop in there because they always had Vernors. If you're in Michigan, Vernors, burn all the way down.
State drink.
And we'd play a game of cribbage. He never let me win. If I beat him, now at that time I was probably about 12, I really had to beat him. Yeah. He would always try to win, and we would laugh about that, and he probably won most of the time, but occasionally I would beat him, but that has stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, and that one win, I bet you that first time it happened, was the proudest thing you could ever remember.
Yeah,
right?
It was wonderful. We went to a friend's house, and their grandson came over, and he likes to play checkers. So they said, why don't you play with Uncle Paul? So I played checkers, and I beat him. It was the first time, he's like a 6-year-old, first time he'd ever lost.
Oh, man.
So I was using my skill to teach kids how to lose.
Were you invited back?
They were all aghast. The first time he'd ever lost. He kind of wanted to quit playing. He didn't want to play.
Well, see, and that's, I think, persistence is so key to mastering some of those, even the easiest skills. If you can get that repetition down, they are so much more confident in addressing that down the road. Because, at one of our last Good Dads meetings at McGregor, I was telling the dads, and they all agreed too, when you face that adversity, mom and dad aren't always around to show you how to make through. And so if you can have these small little things, even at home or chores, or you're playing a game and you add a new wrinkle to it, that lets them critically think on the fly, but it also allows them to overcome something that's in a controlled environment. We know the outcome here because mom and dad's close or whatever. But what we're doing is we're allowing them to have maybe some wins, but experience what it's like to not get it right away. One of Jessica and I, my wife's and I's favorite stories, she loved buying those old school button-down flannel winter jammies for Jack. And, he just looked like a little retiree, trying to put these things on after a bath and his hair got combed over. But when you're 4, buttons are one of the hardest things in your world. And he would get so frustrated, and we'd, help him along, but we wouldn't do it. And then I would say it was almost 2 weeks of really he had 2 different sets of these flannel winter jammies. And the first time he buttoned his whole shirt by himself. He cried. Jessica cried. It was like he had mastered that, and it was just such a big deal. And we celebrated that big. But, I think the fact that we let him struggle with that for a few days, and it wasn't like we weren't mad at him for not getting his
No.
jammies buttoned, but we're like, hey, this is a tough thing for.
Did you take a picture and put it on Facebook?
It's burned in here. It's burned in here. But I mean, I know I can picture exactly where we were in our upstairs bathroom, and when he got that, man, I mean, it was just like this light went off in his head, and he'd never been more proud of getting his buttons done, and that was so key because every night after the bath, we're putting our jammies on, and he finally got it, and it was just such a big deal. I mean, it's one of those core memories for us as parents.
And that's why I don't really like, having 8 teams playing baseball and all of them get an award.
Yeah.
I just don't think that helps you in life to think you'll always be awarded with something. There is a first place team, a second place team. Our kids at the Lutheran school would go to a tournament and they'd start with 16 teams, and all the winners would move into one side and all the losers would move into the other side. So then, Miriam came home once and it's like, we got second place. You got second place in the silver. Well, what does that mean, Miriam? Well, you were the second place of the losers. And she didn't like it. She's probably 7th or 8th grade.
Right.
When you put it in context, all those other 8 teams had won and went ahead.
There's a fine line to walk there too. I mean, not just with the idea of not everyone wins, but the vocabulary behind it. But we also want to remember, it's the losing side of the bracket. We're not calling you losers, but there are winners and losers in competition. If you have a competition, that's just how not everything ends in a tie or not everybody wins. And that's part of understanding that. But I don't know, what's the age when we start getting that? Because my 6-year-old is a terrible loser.
Yeah, they need to have lots of exposure to that. Understanding that sometimes we win, but also the good thing is that you haven't mastered it yet. If you can, you can't do it yet, but someday you will. I mean, ping pong. All right. We have a ping pong table and every one of our grandchildren has tried to beat Papa, but now Stella can do it. And so now it means something.
She doesn't do it regularly, though. It's a freaky thing when Stella beats me.
But when she does, it's a moment, and they all enjoy going and playing each other and seeing who can win. So I think it's just more of a, remember, maybe you haven't mastered it yet, but you're learning, you're growing, and we learn a lot from that. I hate to say failure, but it's really from the feedback we got from not getting it where we wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell Jack, like when he played on a basketball team this year, it was his first year playing organized basketball. And it's the lowest level of our park board sports program. So they don't keep score. It's all about participation and playing. And Jessica and I, our faces were bright red. It was our first game and the other team had scored 3 points, 3 baskets already, and we hadn't scored. We hadn't mastered anything yet. We'd only had one practice. But I had subbed Jack out, so he was on the bench, and he was frustrated because he hadn't, made any baskets. And they had missed the shot, and so I was a coach, and I was going back down the floor with our team. Come on, you go over here, and, picking kids up and moving them because they're 5 and 6. And then we were going down the court and we hadn't made any baskets, and Jack out loud with the other kids around the bench, he's like, Dad, some of these players on our team are. And I was like, that's not what we say, this is kindergarten basketball. I said, buddy, the most important thing now as a 6-year-old is that we're playing the game to learn and have fun. This isn't life and death. It's a game. We're having fun. We're learning. We're mastering skills. It's not about, at this stage in life, winning or losing. And so that enjoyment of the different things in life, because I feel like if you're just told you're a loser or you constantly feel like you're losing, we need to encourage kids to win at times. You need to let them win. But when if you just have that, then they shut that door on whatever that is. And that's what you got to watch out for that.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that a child who tends to be more competitive, success-oriented, perfectionistic, they will avoid trying things they might enjoy because they think they're going to fail at those things. And so you want them to have experiences with things where they can't succeed, where they're maybe not the best, because then they'll learn. Speaking as someone who's really a recovering perfectionist, you have to learn to, like, you're not always going to be successful, but maybe it's fun just to go to that dance class, you know?
I think, more opportunities to experience new things at an early age is important, because if they haven't experienced something when they're in their until they're teens or older, and they taste failure when they're that old, they're more likely to not want to do that anymore.
I think you can have some wonderful experiences at birthday parties where you bring, your 6-year-old and 4 or 5 others, and then you try to do a game, and they're all used to winning.
Yeah.
And you got them all there. and the birthday boy or the birthday girl really thinks they ought to be winning. It's their birthday, so you can have some wonderful time. There are little teaching lessons if you can stand it.
I'm sure a lot of dads out there have seen the TV show Bluey on Disney, and there's a really funny part where this one kid, their dad on the way over to this play date has said that they're the most important little girl in the world, and they're so special and they can do anything they want, which all parents think of that about your kids. Well, then they're playing, and they kept telling the other kids, well, I'm the most important kid in the world. And then the dad had to have a conversation with that little kid again and say, you are the most important thing to us, but not to everybody else. And so we need to play together. And so then the little girl went back to her cousins and said, I'm not the most special kid anymore. So I can play with you. And so understanding that you're special, but there's still a reality that life is not always about winning or being,
Parenting is hard work. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. Jennifer always did that, so I didn't have to worry.
Well, it's a good thing she was around.
Yeah. It made it easy for me.
Yeah. Well, what other lessons can we learn as an educator? Do you have anything else that comes to mind as far as...
I am always big on students failing at school. I'd have some kids that were always doing things just perfectly, but that's because their parents were back behind them checking and double checking. So I would arrange for the teacher to try to set up a situation where they do something in class they didn't get to take it home, even though the child would say, oh, I want to take that. No, it's got to be done and completed here to get a real feel of where they were and to give them that experience of not always having a perfect paper. Mm-hmm. Because it's good you crash and burn in 4th grade and 5th grade, and don't wait till you're 18 and you're off at Missouri State. Right. And it's the first time you find out, I'm not the best at everything.
Yeah.
What's it all about, Alfie? I don't know how to fit into this.
Yeah. I love it. You have anything else, Dr. Baker?
Yeah. I mean, what he said, I do agree that the more we learn that we don't have to be perfect, the more open we can be to other creative experiences. And I worry a little bit that when we focus too much on organizing our child's life all the time in sports and play dates, etc., that we don't give them that opportunity to just be creative or experience things where you don't, your effort is not on some scale.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love it. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of The Difference a Dad Makes, all about building confidence in our kids and maybe even some teachers. Thank you, Paul.
Yes.
So I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and thank you to Dr. Baker, and congratulations to Foch out there with the new baby. Have a great week, everybody.